Over the years, vintage amps have kind of been put on a pedestal. They were a part of so many legendary albums that now they themselves have become legendary. As an owner of two, I thought I'd make this video and talk about some of the pros and the cons of owning and playing them. Let's talk about what they're competing against. Smaller and lighter valve amps, as well as modelling amps and profiling amps. If you're a gigging musician and you have any fly dates, it's just going to be easier to go up modelling or a smaller valve amp. Older amps are a lot heavier. It's probably down to the components, huge transformers which ultimately ends up sounding better, but it weighs a lot. Now, while talking about good quality components, you also have to factor in how expensive they'll be to replace. These amplifiers are old, and over time the components will get wear and tear, especially considering that these amps run very hot. They run a lot hotter than any new valve amp that I've played. Ultimately, again, it's probably going to give you a better tone, but the wear on the components takes its toll. That then factors into reliability. There's issues. Now, the two vintage amps that I'm using today are an Orange Hiwatt 120 from 1976, and I'll also be talking about a Hiwatt Custom 50. The playing demos that you're hearing are coming from the Orange through Marshall Cab. We'll also be talking about the Hiwatt, but we won't be playing it today because, well, you'll find out. The first thing you'll notice when plugging into an older amp is the noise. The noise floor is quite high on these older models, and while it's not overly noticeable through the mic on clean, it's definitely noticeable when you bump up the gain. So let's talk about volume. The Orange is 120 watts, so the headroom is very high, and that means that it's not going to break up until you are absolutely cranking the amp, which I'm not doing today because it's way too loud. You could get an attenuator and do it, but I don't have one of those, so what you're hearing is the clean, which is just the amplifier turned up to where it's tolerable. Now, I'm a real big fan of these clean tones. It sounds so big, and it's primarily because these amps were designed to stay clean. To show you what it would sound like when you actually push it, I'm pushing it artificially with a Klon circuit from the Strymon Sunset. Now, this is going to add a little bit of gain, and also the Strymon has a built-in noise gate which is going to reduce quite a lot of the noise that you'd normally hear when you boost the amp. If you push the front end of the amp with the Klon, you're going to get a classic rock tone, and it sounds really good. One thing that's quite common on these older amps also is a fixed power cord, which can be a bit of a hassle if it's quite short. Nowadays with most modern amps it's just an IEC that'll work for anything, but these amps all have their power cords attached. One other problem with older amps is some of the technology that they were designed to be used with is completely outdated. For example, on the Orange, we've got echo inputs, and while it might seem like it's an effects loop, it's not. It's actually designed for an external Orange product that was somewhat similar to an Echoplex. It doesn't really work like an effects loop, and it definitely doesn't sound good with anything that I've tried through it. Let's talk about the Hiwatt. It's from sometime in the 70s, but it predates any serial numbers, so I really can't tell what it is. It originated in a very, very heavy 4x10 combo. Now I've taken the head out of it for maintenance, but the thing is, I actually don't know what the ohmage is. There'll be some things that you'll notice with older amps. On newer amps, you'll always have everything clearly labelled. On these older ones, most of the stuff is written on marker on the back. So it's really hard to tell what the speaker outputs are, so I'm not going to risk it and plugging it into anything else. I'm just going to use the stock speaker cab. There might be a video in the future just dedicated to the Hiwatt, because I have played through it and it does sound very good. One thing that's really, really cool about these older amplifiers is everything is point-to-point wired and hand done. So if you look inside the Hiwatt, you'll see this military spec wiring, which is what Hiwatt is known for. It really is impressive to see this type of wiring. Ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, from playing quite a few vintage amps and owning these two, while there's a lot of negatives to do with these amps, the main positive is the sound. The cleans on these, because of such high headroom, is amazing. And when you push the amp, you do get the classic rock tones that these amps are famous for. And one thing that you can't deny is they look cool. And that might factor into creativity when you're playing. Would I ever use them live? Probably not, no. But I might use them in the studio, because they do provide sounds that modern amps get close to, but I don't think they hit right on the mark. That was just a quick video on vintage amps. If you're thinking about buying one, maybe factor in the positives and the negatives and where you would use them. That's all from me. Let me know what you think about older amps. Have you tried any? And what ones you liked, what ones you didn't? And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.
Thank you.